stream live with me. Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, my patrons, Clayton, Ruby, Stephanie, and Jonathan, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. There's just two things on my list today. Alright, how to survive as a Pilates instructor. And my number one title is that MMP is a chronometer. Now, I think everybody might know or suspect that just means a watch, right? But the specificity of the word chronometer is for a watch that's meant to keep time at sea, right? And before Seiko watches were around, there was a really big problem about how do you keep track of where you are on the planet left to right. So if you held up a globe, if you held up a globe, say this is the Earth, let's say it's this way, this is the Earth, well, all those flat lines are latitude. But where you are on the Earth this way, when you're sailing around, the British government put up huge prize money for any means to accurately detect where you were, left to right on the globe. So, the point I would make with number one is that when I say MMP is a chronometer, well, a chronometer acknowledges a place in space and a time in space. Meaning that when you're standing on the Earth and the sun goes by overhead, that's going to happen to somebody else, just not at the same time. Because we're on this big thing that's spinning around, right? A chronometer allowed navigators to compute accurately their longitude at sea. So in that regard, I don't know how MMP is a chronometer, other than it's based on, there's I think where I was headed with that. It's an instrument that's meant to take a reading about where you are when. So that takes me to two people, John Harrison and Srinivasa Ramanujan, right? John Harrison, born in 1693 and died in 1776, so died right, when history became relevant to America. And Ramanujan, if he doesn't mind, I'm just going to use his last name because that's the one I'm confident in. Ramanujan lived in India, born 1887, died 1920. So Ramanujan came significantly after John Harrison. Different points in time. But I'm coupling them because why? Because I just finished a book called Longitude, which I really recommend. It's fascinating. And it tells the story of someone that lives in England, and therefore under English rule, who was a self-taught clockmaker. Okay? So John Harrison is a self-taught clockmaker. And Ramanujan was a self-taught mathematician. Math. Both had no formal training and made substantial contributions to surviving and understanding. And going back to John Harrison, this challenge of figuring out like where you are on the globe, this way was pretty easy to calculate. But where am I this way on the globe when I'm this tiny speck out at sea? In some ways, there's a very sad character to, and a more Moriarty-ish, the foil to Sherlock Holmes. But Neville Maskelyne traveled in the same circles as wanting to do this, but instead of a clockmaker, was an astronomer, right? And astronomy, planets, space, stars, where you are based on what stars you see when. There you go. Which comes out to reaching for an ideal that produces a whole lot of tables that are extremely difficult to use in order to get an approximation of where you are east to west on the planet. So the whole culture, that's human nature, that sees itself as, I would think, ascendant to a carpenter, and the approach that a carpenter could come out with, the determination of where you are, better than the complexities of understanding the heavens, and in that, figuring out where you are from that, which turned out to be much more complicated than having an accurate watch that, according to some line on this globe, right, Greenwich, England, is the one that ended up being chosen, but when you're standing there and it's high noon, right, this is what time it is. So that when the earth turns, and then you're standing here, you know it's so many hours from high noon, where you are, versus where it was in England, and that transition of time translates to degrees, and based on the time difference allows you to calculate where you are east to west, your longitude in space. John Harrison, seeking the prize that the government put up, continued to let the government change the rules to where he was never going to get it, even though the significant accomplishment had already been done. So, talking to you as a listener, adding 2 and 2 and Pilates and as an instructor. Go past the prize or the recognition and just sell the device outright. Now, I don't know if the government would have let that happen or not, but easily it was the utility of the device and the reliability of it that the East India Company created a column in their logs for their ship's captains for the chronological longitude, meaning where are you according to the chronometer, meaning in MMP as a what is this relative to MMP is the point I'm making about MMP being a POV, point of view. So Ramanujan when asked why he was writing this stuff down, told his wife, I think, that someday people will value this. Now, he ended up going to England and seeking validation or recognition under the scrutiny of those who would judge, and ended up ruining his health and spending all that time away from family. In my opinion, we might have all been better off, especially he commercially, again, if they'd have let him do it, if he'd have just stayed at home with his wife and written his notes and offered them for sale and let anybody make of them whatever they wanted, whatever they could. See, there's a difference there, right? So in the neo-masculine point of view, pursuing an astronomer's point of view of determining where you are by observing celestial bodies and their interactions, a clockmaker able to hold reliable time allowed you to come to within a high degree of accuracy of where you were left to right when you're sailing around the world. Way before, he died writing out that there's no way I can fulfill the terms of what you set up or how you've come to describe them. So I think he'd have been much better staying a clockmaker and just selling this thing called a chronometer that means a marine clock that's meant to hold its time through the vagaries of being at sea. So in the sense that you establish where you are from the heavens, a very highbrow intellectual approach, compared to building a clock, a clash of cultures, a clash of points of view of the world, and yet the clarity of and the ability of John Harrison to keep accurate time at sea. Talk about surviving. Talk about superior advantage in terms of navigation. Why do you think the East India Company issued log books to fill out that had a column for the chronometer longitude? Where we are this way, left to right, on the planet. Way fascinating. And maybe it's an arbitrary point of view, but the clock, in it being a device, right, is the thing itself, and that out of that, it's like, is an eccentric thing. It's from the time, from the ability to hold accurate time, you can accurately tell where you are, much easier, more practically, that way than coming from the outside in. So, in terms of Pilates being eccentric, this whole thing of how we calculate longitude, to do it in a much bigger surviving way, is through the use of accurate time. Of somewhere else, what time is it? Because when the sun goes over here, I know that when the sun went over there, what time it was. How many hours between now and when it was then. And you can figure out where you are this way on the planet. So, in both cases, oh man, it's human nature for the collective to pressure and push and deny what someone may want in order to get more of what they want before they give it away. And so in my summary, the rules always change. And being in a retail store that actually had the very first IBM personal computers that someone could come in and buy and walk out the door with, as a salesman, the rules under which you were paid were constantly changing. And that's all part of the commerce of things. But it acknowledges that, how did I say that then? You are controlled by what you want. And in both of Harrison and Ramanujan's case, they were definitely treated one way by the culture, and might have fared better, like pond, sailing, all that, if they had just, and did, I think, really did. Such the pioneer. Once it was like, here it is, you have, what you're after is the timepiece, you're after keeping track of the time as a means to establishing where you are left or right on the globe. Then the dam broke, and everybody then became designers of chronometers. Because the issue is the accuracy of the time it keeps. Pointing to where you are on the planet. And I know that's perhaps limited and we could go beyond into space, but and just historically in those two people's lifetimes, and that they with no formal training, made significant contributions. Okay. Somebody else controls the bar. You have to get over to get what you want. That's just the role of wanting something, right? And so there's my culminating remark is, go past what you want to what they want. Meaning the public. Because then you control how you relate to them or interact with them by just selling directly to them. So Harrison could have just sold clocks, and yet I'm sure in a way you're fighting for, and there's such a great history of patent and implementation and so life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Evaluate perspectives. And when it comes to add 2 plus 2, my message is sell direct. And then let whoever else catch up that's interested. And then it seems once you can do that, if you can do that, then everyone else will come to you immediately because you have a direct connection with the culture at large, with the public. And my takeaway is to keep in mind that humans with no formal training can make significant contributions. And to the extent that you are, and you experience the treatment that Harrison and Ramanujan endured, I mean, you add in Tesla, you add in all kinds of that creative interaction between those that out of that comes something. I threw away my note. Add 2 and 2. Oh, sell direct and let them keep up. Maybe the message is know that all you really want to do is go right to the public. Because if you're whatever you're selling has any utility, they'll be the first ones to pick it up and run with it. Because it's such a broad spectrum. Direct your thinking. Geist.